The morning Denise walked into that office, she had no idea her entire world was about to collapse. She'd worked there for 17 years, 17 years of early mornings and late nights, 17 years of perfect reviews and zero complaints. She raised 2 kids while keeping that job. She buried her mother while keeping that job. She survived cancer while keeping that job. And in 17 minutes, they took it all away. No warning, no explanation. Just a white envelope on her desk and a security guard waiting by the door. "We're letting you go," they said. "Cold, clean, done." She asked why. They wouldn't say. She asked for a reason. They said the decision was final. Denise left that building with a box of her belongings and a heart full of questions. But losing her job was just the beginning. Within 3 months, she lost her apartment. Within 6 months, she was living in her car. Within a year, people who once called her friend wouldn't even look her in the eye. But here's what they didn't know. Here's what nobody knew until it was too late. Denise wasn't fired because she did something wrong. She was fired because she knew something they wanted to keep buried. Something so dark, so twisted, that they were willing to destroy an innocent woman's life to protect it. And when the truth finally came out, it didn't just shock the company, it shocked the entire city. Let me show you exactly how this happened. Denise Carter was 43 years old when her life fell apart. She worked as a senior accountant at Riverside Financial Group in Atlanta. Not the biggest firm in the city, but respected, established. The kind of place where people built careers, not just collected paychecks. Denise started there right out of college. She was 26, eager, and determined to prove herself. She was one of only 3 black women in the entire accounting department back then. She knew she had to work twice as hard to get half the recognition. So that's exactly what she did. She arrived early. She stayed late. She double-checked everything. She never missed a deadline. She became the person everyone went to when the numbers didn't add up. Over the years, she earned promotions. Not as many as she deserved, but enough to feel like she was moving forward. She bought a small apartment in a decent neighborhood. She put her daughter through college. She helped her son get into a good high school. Life wasn't perfect, but it was hers. She built it with her own 2 hands. Then came January 2023. Denise was assigned to audit a new investment account. Standard procedure, big client, lots of money moving around. Nothing unusual. But when she started going through the numbers, something felt off. Transactions that didn't make sense. Money flowing in and out with no clear paper trail. Dates that didn't match up. Names that appeared and disappeared. At first, she thought it was just sloppy bookkeeping. Maybe someone made mistakes. Maybe files got mixed up. She mentioned it to her supervisor, a man named David Chen. He'd been there almost as long as she had. They weren't close, but they were professional, respectful. "I'll look into it," he told her. "Don't worry about it." But Denise couldn't stop worrying, because the more she looked, the worse it got. This wasn't sloppy bookkeeping. This was deliberate. This was someone hiding something. She spent 3 weeks digging deeper on her own time. 3 weeks of staying late after everyone left. 3 weeks of printing records and cross-referencing accounts. And then she found it. The pattern. The proof. The truth. But just when she thought she knew what to do with this information, things took a darker turn. The truth Denise discovered was simple and devastating. Someone at Riverside Financial was laundering money. Not small amounts, not petty theft. We're talking millions of dollars flowing through fake accounts, disguised as legitimate investments. Money coming in dirty and going out clean. And it had been happening for years. Denise sat at her desk one cold February night, staring at the spreadsheet spread across her computer screen. Her hands were shaking. Her heart was pounding. She knew what this meant. She knew what she had to do, but she also knew what could happen if she did it. She'd heard the stories. Whistleblowers who lost everything, people who spoke up and got crushed, truth-tellers who ended up destroyed while the guilty walked free. But Denise wasn't raised to look the other way. Her grandmother used to tell her, "Baby, when you see wrong, you speak up. Even if your voice shakes, even if you stand alone, you speak up." So she made copies of everything. She documented every suspicious transaction. She wrote a detailed report explaining what she found and how it worked. Then she went to David Chen again. This time, she didn't just mention concerns. She laid it all out. The fake accounts, the missing money, the pattern that proved this wasn't an accident. David's face went pale as he looked through her documents. "Where did you get all this?" he asked. "From our own system," she said. "It's all there. Someone's been using our company to wash dirty money. We have to report this." David closed the folder. He looked at her for a long moment. "Denise," he said slowly, "you need to be very careful here." "Careful?" She couldn't believe what she was hearing. "David, this is serious. This is illegal. We could all go to jail if this comes out and we knew about it." "Exactly," he said, "which is why we need to handle this the right way. Let me take this to the partners. Let me present it properly. You've done good work here, but this is bigger than you, bigger than both of us." Something in his voice made her stomach drop. "You're going to report it, right?" she asked. "You're going to tell them what I found?" "Of course," he said. "Just give me some time. And Denise, don't talk to anyone else about this. Not yet. We don't want to cause a panic." She left his office feeling uneasy, but she trusted him. She'd known him for years. That was her first mistake. 2 weeks later, Denise was called into a meeting with Human Resources. No warning, no explanation. Just a message on her phone. "Please report to HR immediately." She walked into that conference room and found 3 people waiting for her. The HR director, a lawyer she'd never seen before, and David Chen. David wouldn't look at her. "Ms. Carter," the HR director said, "we've received some serious complaints about your conduct." Denise's blood went cold. "What complaints?" "Multiple employees have reported that you've been accessing confidential files without authorization. You've been staying late without approval, using company resources for personal matters, and creating a hostile work environment." "That's not true," Denise said. Her voice was shaking now. "I was investigating." "We're also concerned about some irregularities in your own expense reports," the lawyer interrupted. "Missing receipts, questionable charges. It appears there may be some financial misconduct on your part." The room started spinning. They were lying, all of it. Lies stacked on lies. She looked at David. "Tell them," she said. "Tell them what I found. Tell them why I was looking at those files." David finally met her eyes. What she saw there broke something inside her. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said. "You never brought anything to me. And honestly, Denise, I've been worried about your performance lately. You've seemed unstable." She couldn't breathe. She couldn't think. "This is insane," she whispered. "You know this is insane." "We're terminating your employment effective immediately," the HR director said. "You'll receive 2 weeks severance. Sign this agreement, and we'll provide a neutral reference for future employers." Denise looked at the paper they slid across the table. It was full of legal language, but the message was clear. Take the money. Keep your mouth shut. Go away quietly. "And if I don't sign?" The lawyer smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. "Then we'll have no choice but to pursue legal action against you for the financial discrepancies we've discovered. We have documentation, we have witnesses, and we have a very good legal team." Denise felt tears burning behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of these people. "You're doing this because I found out," she said. "You're destroying me because I told the truth." Nobody answered. "But if you think that was heartbreaking, wait until you see what came next." Denise didn't sign the agreement. She walked out of that office with her box of belongings and her dignity still intact. Barely. She went home and called every lawyer she could find. Employment lawyers, civil rights lawyers, criminal lawyers. They all said the same thing. Without proof, we can't help you. But she had proof. She had copies of everything. Except when she went to look for them, they were gone. The files she'd saved to her personal drive, deleted. The documents she'd printed and hidden in her apartment, missing. The flash drive she kept in her purse, corrupted, unreadable. Denise sat on her living room floor, surrounded by empty folders and useless papers, and realized the full extent of what she was up against. They didn't just fire her, they erased her evidence. They must have had access to her computer, her apartment, her entire life. She felt violated, terrified, completely alone. But she still had her memory. She still knew what she'd seen, and she wasn't going to let them win. She started writing everything down. Every transaction she could remember, every name. She filled notebook after notebook with details. But without the actual financial records, it was just her word against theirs. And they had lawyers, money, and power. She had nothing. The severance pay ran out after 2 months. She applied to dozens of jobs, but something was wrong. Every interview went well until they called her references. Then suddenly positions were filled, budgets were cut. Hiring freezes happened. It took her a while to figure out what was happening. Riverside Financial was blackballing her. They weren't giving her a neutral reference like they promised. They were telling potential employers that she was unstable, untrustworthy, a liability. One hiring manager was kind enough to be honest with her. "Look," he said over the phone, "off the record, I wanted to hire you. Your interview was great, but when we called your last employer, they said things that, well, I can't take that risk, I'm sorry." "What did they say?" Denise asked. He hesitated. "They said you were fired for stealing. They said you were under investigation. They said if we hired you, we'd regret it." Denise felt her world crumbling. They weren't just destroying her career, they were destroying her reputation, her name, her future. By month 4, she couldn't pay her rent. Her landlord was sympathetic at first. He knew her. She'd lived there for 6 years, always paid on time, but sympathy doesn't pay bills. "I'm sorry, Denise," he said, "but I've got my own mortgage to worry about." "You've got 30 days. She tried to find a cheaper place, but without a job, nobody would rent to her. She applied for assistance programs, but the waiting lists were months long. 30 days came and went. On a Tuesday morning in July, Denise packed everything she owned into her 12-year-old Toyota. Her daughter was away at college, thank God. She didn't have to see this. Didn't have to know that her mother was now homeless. Denise told her everything was fine. She was between apartments. Just a temporary situation. She couldn't tell her daughter the truth. Couldn't let her drop out of school to help. This was Denise's burden to carry. She spent the first night in a Walmart parking lot. Tried to sleep in the back seat. Couldn't. She spent the second night behind a closed grocery store. Better, darker, more private. By the end of the first week, she had a routine. She knew which parking lots were safe, which gas station bathrooms she could use to wash up, which churches gave out free meals on which days. She kept looking for work, any work. She applied to retail stores, restaurants, cleaning services, places that wouldn't check references. But even then, something always went wrong. Applications got lost, positions got filled. The economy was tough. She knew they were still watching her, still making sure she stayed down. Her daughter called every week. Denise always answered with a smile in her voice. Always said everything was great. Always asked about classes and friends and life. She never mentioned that she was eating 1 meal a day. Never mentioned that she showered at the YMCA. Never mentioned that she cried herself to sleep in a cold car every night. Her son was harder to fool. He was only 16, still living with his father, but he was sharp. He knew something was wrong. "Mom, are you okay?" he asked one day. "Really okay?" "I'm fine, baby," she lied. "Just working through some things. Can I come see you?" "Not right now, but soon, I promise." She hated lying to her children, but she couldn't let them see her like this. Couldn't let them carry her shame. 6 months into living in her car, winter came. Atlanta doesn't get brutally cold like northern cities, but it gets cold enough. Cold enough to make sleeping in a car miserable. Cold enough to make every night feel endless. Denise wore every piece of clothing she owned. She wrapped herself in blankets. She ran the car for heat when she could afford gas. But the isolation was worse than the cold. She watched people walk by every day. People she used to work with. People she used to know. Some of them looked right at her and didn't recognize her. Others recognized her and looked away. She became invisible, another homeless person that society trained itself not to see. The woman who once balanced million-dollar accounts now counted quarters for McDonald's coffee. The woman who once had a retirement plan now had a survival plan. The woman who once had hope now had only faith. Faith that somehow, someday, the truth would matter. Faith that justice existed somewhere beyond corporate lawyers and corrupt systems. Faith that God hadn't forgotten her, even when everyone else had. But just when it seemed all hope was lost, something incredible happened. 9 months after Denise was fired, a woman named Patricia walked into a police station in downtown Atlanta. Patricia worked at Riverside Financial. She'd been there for 3 years. She was a junior accountant. Quiet, kept to herself. And she'd been watching everything. Patricia sat across from Detective James Morrison and placed a folder on his desk. "I need to report a crime," she said. "Several crimes, actually, and I need protection." Detective Morrison had been on the force for 20 years. He'd heard a lot of stories, but this one was different. Patricia told him about the money laundering operation at Riverside Financial. She told him how it worked, who was involved, and how long it had been happening. And she told him about Denise Carter. "There was a woman who discovered it," Patricia said. "About a year ago. She tried to report it. They fired her, destroyed her, made her disappear." "Why didn't she go to the police?" Morrison asked. "I don't know," Patricia said. "Maybe she tried. Maybe she was too scared. Maybe she thought no one would believe her without proof." "And you have proof?" Patricia opened the folder. Inside were documents, bank statements, wire transfer records, internal emails, everything. "I've been copying files for 6 months," she said. "I watched what they did to Denise. I knew if I said anything, they'd do the same to me. So I waited, I gathered evidence, and now I'm ready." "Why now?" Morrison asked. Patricia's eyes filled with tears. "Because yesterday I saw her." "Saw who?" "Denise. I saw her sleeping in her car outside the library. She looked—" Patricia's voice broke. "She looked destroyed, and I realized I couldn't stay quiet anymore. That could be me. That could be any of us. These people are evil, and someone has to stop them." Morrison called the FBI. Within 48 hours, federal agents raided Riverside Financial. They seized servers. They froze accounts. They brought in everyone for questioning. The investigation moved fast. The evidence Patricia provided was airtight. Wire fraud, money laundering, racketeering. The charges kept piling up. 7 people were arrested, including David Chin and 2 senior partners at the firm. The scandal made national news. Atlanta financial firm accused of massive money laundering scheme. FBI raids Riverside Financial Group. Whistleblower exposes corporate corruption. But here's what most news stories missed. Here's what didn't make the headlines. Detective Morrison couldn't stop thinking about Denise Carter, the woman who tried to do the right thing and lost everything. He spent a week looking for her, checking homeless shelters, asking around, following leads. He finally found her on a Thursday afternoon, sitting on a bench outside the public library. She was thinner than her employee photo. Her clothes were worn. Her eyes were tired, but she held her head high. "Miss Carter?" he said. "Denise Carter?" She looked up at him with caution. "When you're homeless, police officers usually mean trouble." "Yes?" He sat down next to her. My name is Detective James Morrison. I've been looking for you." Her face went pale. "I didn't do anything wrong." "I know," he said gently. "That's why I'm here." He told her everything. About Patricia, about the raid, about the arrests. "You were right," he said. "Everything you tried to report was true. And because of what you discovered, we were able to bring them down." Denise didn't say anything for a long time. She just stared at her hands. "I lost everything," she finally whispered. "I lost my job, my home, my reputation, almost lost my mind. And for what? They still destroyed me." "Not everything," Morrison said. He pulled out a business card. "This is the FBI agent heading the investigation. She wants to talk to you. You're a material witness now, and there's something called a whistleblower reward program. You might be entitled to compensation." "I don't want money," Denise said. "I just wanted someone to listen. I just wanted the truth to matter." "It does matter," Morrison said. "It mattered to Patricia. It mattered to me. It matters to justice." Tears finally came. Denise had held them back for 9 months, through the cold nights and hungry days and endless humiliation. But now, sitting on that bench with a stranger who believed her, she let them fall. "I thought God forgot about me," she said through her tears. "I thought I did the right thing and he just left me here." Morrison didn't know what to say to that. He wasn't a religious man. But he'd seen enough in 20 years to know that sometimes good people suffer for a long time before things get better. "Maybe he didn't forget," Morrison said quietly. "Maybe he was just waiting for the right moment." Within a week, Denise was connected with legal advocates who specialized in wrongful termination cases. They took her case pro bono. Within 2 weeks, she was moved into a transitional housing program for people rebuilding their lives. Within a month, the FBI officially named her as a cooperating witness and enrolled her in their whistleblower protection program. But the best moment came 6 weeks after Morrison found her. Denise was sitting in a small apartment, her first real home in almost a year, when her phone rang. It was Patricia. "I'm sorry it took me so long," Patricia said. "I should have spoken up when you did. I should have stood with you." Denise felt a wave of emotion she couldn't name. Not quite forgiveness, not quite gratitude, something deeper. "You did what you could when you could," Denise said. "That's all any of us can do." "I've been thinking," Patricia said. "Once this is all over, once the trial ends, maybe we should start something together. Help other people who want to speak up but are afraid. Create protection before they need it, not after." Denise smiled for the first time in months, a real smile. "I'd like that," she said. The criminal trials took another year. David Chen pleaded guilty to avoid a longer sentence. The senior partners tried to fight, but the evidence was overwhelming. In the end, 5 people went to federal prison. Riverside Financial collapsed, and Denise Carter received a settlement of $2.3 million for wrongful termination and retaliation. But more than the money, more than the vindication, what mattered most was this: she was right. And now everyone knew it. So what does all this mean for us today? Denise's story isn't just about one woman and one company. It's about a system that protects power over people, a system that makes it easier to destroy the truth teller than to face the truth. Think about how many times you've heard stories like this. Someone speaks up at work about discrimination. They get fired. Someone reports safety violations. They get blacklisted. Someone exposes corruption. They get crushed. We call them whistleblowers. We call them heroes. But we don't always protect them. And we rarely think about what happens to them after the cameras stop rolling. Denise lived in her car for 9 months. 9 months. She went from having a career, a home, and a future to having nothing. Not because she did something wrong, but because she did something right. And here's the hard truth: she's one of the lucky ones. Because at least her story had an ending where justice eventually came. At least the bad guys eventually went to prison. At least she eventually got vindicated. But for every Denise Carter whose story ends with justice, there are dozens who never get that moment, who speak up and lose everything and never get it back, who die broken while the people who destroyed them live comfortable lives. That's the reality of being a whistleblower in America, especially if you're black, especially if you're a woman, especially if you don't have money or power or connections. Studies show that up to 90% of whistleblowers face retaliation. They get fired, they get blacklisted, they suffer depression, anxiety, and PTSD. The average whistleblower loses $200,000 in legal fees and lost wages. Many lose their homes. Many lose their marriages. Some lose their lives to suicide. And yet we keep asking people to speak up. We keep saying, if you see something, say something. We keep pretending that doing the right thing is always rewarded. But Denise's story teaches us something more complex, something more honest. Sometimes doing the right thing costs you everything, and you do it anyway. Because the alternative, staying silent, looking away, protecting yourself while others suffer, that costs something too. It costs your soul. Denise could have kept her mouth shut, could have ignored what she found, could have stayed comfortable and employed and safe. But she would have known. Every day for the rest of her life she would have known. That she saw evil and did nothing. That she had the truth and buried it. That she chose comfort over courage. Some people can live with that. Denise couldn't. Her grandmother's voice was too loud in her head. When you see wrong, you speak up. So she spoke up. And she paid the price. And she would do it again. That's not stupidity. That's not naivety. That's integrity. And we need more of it in this world. We need more people who are willing to lose everything for the truth. More people who can't be bought or intimidated or silenced. But here's what we also need. We need to protect them. We need stronger whistleblower protection laws. We need better support systems. We need faster investigations and harsher penalties for retaliation. We need to make it dangerous to destroy the messenger instead of just dangerous to be the messenger. Because right now the system is backwards. Right now it's easier and safer to commit fraud than to report it. Think about what Riverside Financial did to Denise. They accessed her personal computer. They went through her apartment. They coordinated a smear campaign. They weaponized HR and legal departments. They spent thousands of dollars and countless hours making sure one woman couldn't tell the truth. All that effort to protect a crime, all that energy to maintain corruption. If they'd put half that energy into just not laundering money, none of this would have happened. But criminals don't think that way. Corrupt people don't think that way. They think about protecting themselves, about maintaining power, about winning at any cost. And they count on good people being too afraid to stand against them. That's why Denise's courage matters. That's why Patricia's courage matters. Because every time someone speaks up despite the cost, they make it a little bit easier for the next person. They prove that the powerful aren't untouchable. They show that truth can survive even when it's buried. And here's something else we need to talk about. Race. Denise is a black woman. Patricia is a black woman. That matters. It matters because black women are often the first to see injustice. They're often the first to speak up. And they're often the ones who pay the highest price. Study after study shows that black whistleblowers face more severe retaliation than white whistleblowers. They're less likely to be believed, less likely to find new employment, less likely to recover financially. The intersection of race and gender makes the risk even higher. Black women are seen as both threatening and disposable, too loud when they speak up, too invisible when they need help. Denise faced all of that, the condescension, the gaslighting, the assumption that she was being difficult or emotional or paranoid. David Chen's words still haunt her. You've seemed unstable. That one word, unstable, used to dismiss everything she said, to make her seem irrational, to give them cover to destroy her. It's a word that gets used against women, especially black women, all the time. A word that means, don't listen to her. She's not credible. She's the problem. And it works. Until someone like Patricia comes forward with undeniable proof. But even then, notice what happened. The news stories talked about the FBI raid, the arrests, the money laundering scheme. Very few of them talked about Denise. Very few of them mentioned that she tried to report this a year earlier and was destroyed for it. She became a footnote in her own story, a material witness instead of the hero she actually was. That's another pattern we see again and again. The whistleblower suffers while others take credit. The person who risked everything gets forgotten, while the system that eventually worked gets praised. We need to remember Denise's name. We need to honor what she sacrificed. We need to make sure her story doesn't disappear like so many others, because her story is our story. Her fight is our fight. Every single one of us will face a moment when we have to choose between what's easy and what's right, between our comfort and our conscience. Most of those moments won't be as dramatic as discovering money laundering, but they'll still matter. Speaking up when someone makes a racist joke at work, reporting harassment even when you're afraid of retaliation, standing with someone being treated unfairly even when it puts you at risk. Those are whistleblower moments too. Those are times when you decide what kind of person you want to be. And Denise's story reminds us it might cost you. It might cost you a lot. But staying silent has a cost too. A cost we sometimes don't see until it's too late. Denise lost her job, her home, and her hope for a while. But she kept her soul. She kept her integrity. She kept her faith. And in the end, she got something money can't buy. The knowledge that she was right. The knowledge that she stood for something. The knowledge that she mattered. Not because of what she achieved, but because of who she chose to be when it was hardest to be it. Before we wrap up, there's one final truth you need to hear. 2 years after the arrests, Denise and Patricia launched an organization called Truth Shield. It's a nonprofit that provides legal support, financial assistance, and emotional counseling to whistleblowers. They help people document evidence safely. They connect them with lawyers. They offer temporary housing and job placement services. They do everything that Denise wished someone had done for her. "We can't stop people from facing retaliation," Denise told a reporter at their launch event, "but we can make sure they don't face it alone. We can make sure they don't lose everything like I did." The organization started small, just Denise and Patricia working out of a small office funded by Denise's settlement money. But word spread quickly. Whistleblowers from across the country started reaching out. People who were facing the same nightmare Denise faced. People who needed someone to believe them. Within a year, Truth Shield had helped 43 people. Within 2 years, they'd expanded to 3 cities. They'd partnered with law firms, advocacy groups, and congressional offices. They were making a difference. But the story that matters most, the story that Denise thinks about every day, happened 6 months after they launched. A young woman named Kenya came to their office. She was 28 years old, working at a pharmaceutical company, and she'd discovered that her company was suppressing research about dangerous side effects in one of their drugs. Kenya was terrified. She'd already been called into meetings with HR. She'd already been told to focus on her assigned duties and stop asking unnecessary questions. She knew what was coming. She'd read stories like Denise's. She knew that speaking up could destroy her life. "I have student loans," Kenya told them, crying. "I have my mom to take care of. I can't lose my job. I can't end up homeless, but people are dying from this drug, and if I don't say something, how do I live with that?" Denise sat across from Kenya and saw herself. Same fear, same impossible choice, same lonely burden. But this time, it was different. "You're not alone," Denise said. "We're going to help you document everything. We're going to connect you with a lawyer who specializes in pharmaceutical whistleblowing. We're going to set up a fund to cover your expenses if you lose your job. And we're going to be with you every step of the way." Kenya's case took 8 months. She did lose her job. She did face retaliation. But she didn't face homelessness. She didn't face it alone. And when the FDA finally investigated based on her evidence, the drug was pulled from the market. How many lives did Kenya save? Hundreds? Thousands? No one knows for sure. But they know this. She saved them because Denise survived, because Denise turned her pain into purpose, because Denise refused to let her suffering be meaningless. That's the real ending to this story. Not the arrests, or the settlement, or even the vindication. The real ending is that Denise took the worst experience of her life and used it to protect others from the same fate. She turned her brokenness into a bridge, her tragedy into transformation. That's what faith looks like when it survives. Not just belief that things will get better, but commitment to make things better for those who come after you. Denise still thinks about those 9 months in her car. She still has nightmares sometimes. She still struggles with trust, but she doesn't regret speaking up. She doesn't wish she'd stayed silent. "I lost everything," she said in a recent interview. "But I found out what I'm made of. I found out what really matters. And I found out that God doesn't waste our pain. He transforms it." Her daughter graduated from college and now works as a civil rights attorney. Her son is in college studying social justice. Both of them say their mother is their hero. Not because she's perfect, not because she never struggled, but because when the world tried to break her, she refused to stay broken. She rebuilt, she recovered, she rose, and she brought others with her. That's the lesson of Denise Carter's story. That's the truth that matters most. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing what's right even when you're terrified. Integrity isn't easy. It's expensive. But it's the only thing no one can take from you unless you give it away. And faith, real faith, isn't believing that bad things won't happen. It's trusting that even when they do, they won't have the final word. Denise lost her job, but she found her purpose. She lost her home, but she built something bigger. She lost her hope for a little while, but she never lost her faith. And that faith, that stubborn, unshakable faith, didn't just save her. It's saving others, too. Because every time someone calls Truth Shield for help, they're met by a woman who knows exactly what they're going through. A woman who survived the fire and came back to guide others through it. Every time a whistleblower decides to speak up because they know they won't face it alone, that's Denise's legacy. Every time a corrupt system gets exposed because someone was brave enough to tell the truth, that's Denise's impact. She didn't just survive her story, she redeemed it. And maybe that's what we're all called to do with our pain. Not just endure it, not just overcome it, but transform it into something that heals others. Maybe that's what it means to keep faith. To believe that our suffering isn't random or meaningless. To trust that even in our darkest moments we're being prepared for something greater. Denise Carter started as a senior accountant who found something wrong and tried to do something right. She became a homeless woman living in her car, forgotten by everyone who once knew her. And she ended up as a beacon of hope for people fighting the same battle she once fought alone. That transformation didn't happen overnight. It didn't happen easily. And it didn't happen because she was special or chosen or somehow stronger than everyone else. It happened because she made a choice. Every single day, she made a choice. On the coldest nights in that car, she chose to believe tomorrow might be different. On the hungriest days, she chose to keep her dignity. On the loneliest moments, she chose to remember who she was, not what they tried to make her. She chose faith over bitterness, purpose over anger, love over hate. Those choices didn't feel powerful at the time. They felt like survival, like the bare minimum she needed to keep breathing. But looking back now, she sees them differently. She sees that every small choice to keep going was actually a choice to keep becoming, to keep growing, to keep preparing for the work she was meant to do. "I used to pray for God to change my circumstances," Denise said recently. "But what he did was change me. He used those circumstances to show me what I was capable of, to show me what really matters, to show me who I was meant to become. There's a photo on the wall of Truth Shield's office. It's from the day they opened. Denise and Patricia standing together, arms around each other, smiling. But if you look closely, you can see something else in their eyes. Not just happiness, not just relief. You can see the weight of what they carried to get there, the scars of what they survived, the knowledge of what they paid, and you can see the determination never to let someone else pay that price alone. That photo reminds everyone who walks into that office, you're not crazy, you're not alone, and your truth matters. Last month, Denise received a letter from Kenya, the pharmaceutical whistleblower. Kenya had just started a new job, a good job with a company that valued integrity. She was rebuilding her life, just like Denise had. "I wanted to thank you," Kenya wrote, "not just for the practical help, though that saved my life, but for showing me that it's possible to come back from something like this, that speaking up doesn't have to be the end of your story. It can be the beginning of a new one." Denise read that letter 3 times. Then she folded it carefully and put it in a box with dozens of others. Letters from people she'd helped, people she'd walked with through their darkest days. Each letter was a reminder that her pain wasn't wasted, that her suffering had meaning, that her story was bigger than just her. And isn't that what we all hope for? That our struggles will matter? That our pain will produce something beyond itself? That our lives will mean something more than just the accumulation of good days and bad days? Denise found that meaning, but she didn't find it by avoiding hardship. She found it by walking through the fire and letting it refine her instead of destroy her. She found it by refusing to let injustice have the final word, by choosing to be part of the solution instead of just another victim of the problem. She found it by keeping faith when faith was all she had left. Today, when Denise tells her story at conferences and events, she always ends the same way. "I'm not special," she says. "I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who couldn't stay quiet when I saw wrong, and I paid a price for that, a heavy price." She pauses, takes a breath, looks out at the audience. "But I'd do it again. Because I know now what I didn't know then. The hardest roads lead to the most beautiful destinations. The deepest pain produces the strongest purpose, and the darkest nights prepare us for the brightest dawns." So if you're facing your own impossible choice right now, if you're wondering whether speaking up is worth the cost, I can't tell you it'll be easy. I can't promise you won't lose things that matter. I can't guarantee a happy ending. But I can tell you this: you'll never regret choosing truth over comfort. You'll never regret choosing integrity over security. You'll never regret being the kind of person who couldn't stay silent when it mattered. And you won't face it alone, not anymore. Not as long as people like me and Patricia and thousands of others keep standing up and speaking out and building bridges for those who come after us. So keep your faith. Keep your voice. Keep your truth. Because sometimes the hardest stories are the ones that heal us all. Denise Carter is 50 years old now. She has a small apartment filled with light. She has work that matters. She has children who are proud of her. She has a community of truth-tellers who understand what she's been through. She also has trauma she's still processing, triggers she's still managing, trust issues she's still working on. Recovery isn't a straight line. Healing isn't instant. Some wounds leave scars that never fully fade. But she's here. She's whole. She's herself again. Maybe more herself than she's ever been. Because she knows now what she was always capable of, what she was always made of, what she was always meant to do. The system that tried to erase her only made her stronger. The people who tried to silence her only amplified her voice. The pain that nearly destroyed her became the foundation of her purpose. That's the power of resilience. That's the miracle of transformation. That's what happens when faith survives the worst thing you can imagine. You don't just survive. You rise. You rebuild. You become a light for others still walking through darkness. And that light, That stubborn, unquenchable light is what changes the world. One whistleblower at a time. One truth at a time. One act of courage at a time. Denise Carter lost her job, her home, and her hope. But she never lost her faith. And that faith, tested, refined, and proven, is now a shelter for others. A refuge for truth-tellers, a sanctuary for the brave, a promise that speaking up doesn't mean standing alone. Not anymore. Not as long as we remember her story. Not as long as we honor her sacrifice. Not as long as we choose to be the kind of people who protect the truth instead of punishing it. That's her legacy. That's her gift to us. And maybe that's the real ending we all need to hear. The hardest stories don't just survive. They transform. They inspire. They heal. And they remind us that even in our darkest moments, especially in our darkest moments, we're capable of extraordinary light.